Now is it worth spending almost $2,500 for this Nikon 24-70 f2.8 S lens when I already have a Tamron G2 lens? Let's find out. What's up guys, Myung here from Camera to Freedom, and I was lucky this Christmas because my wife bought me this Nikon 24-70 S lens for my Nikon Z6. And I've mentioned this before, but I've been shooting for almost 18 years and I could never get myself to spend more than how much I spend on my camera, right? My camera would be $2,000. I just don't want to spend more than $2,000 for a lens when Tamron and Sigma has always been there to make just as good of a lens for half the price. So if I could get one Nikon 24-70 S lens f2.8, or I could get two of this lens, or even get one of this Tamron G2 lens and with the 70-200 f2.8 and be complete. And realistically, if you're just starting out, or even if you're not starting out, that's just like the smart way of investing your money, right? But with that said and out the way, I'm just here to let you know that this Nikon 24-70 f2.8 S lens is the best lens I've ever used in my life. And that's saying a lot because I have a lot of lenses and I've used a lot of lenses, but I really couldn't understand why I would even want to spend that kind of money on this lens. But after getting it and playing with it for a while, it blew my mind. It's totally different. Well, it's a fraction of a difference between my Tamron lens. I mean, obviously, when it comes to image quality, they're very close. I mean, no one's gonna ever know that you shot a video or photo with this Tamron lens or this Nikon lens, but it's how you feel when you have it on your camera, your Z camera. It feels so different. Now, let me first start off by saying that this lens has built-in VR. This lens has built-in VR. Now, the reason why that's so exciting for me was because before I got this lens, I looked at every review video about this lens, and yes, everybody says how it is the best for them as well, and that is true, but almost every one of them said that it doesn't have VR in it, just because you don't see a VR switch that Nikon is so used to giving us right here. But because they are going full electronic, going very modern, as soon as I popped this onto my Z6 camera and turned on my video and photo, the VR was activated. You actually have to go into the setting and then turn on the VR and turn it off. Now, before I had this lens, I saw that setting being grayed out, and I was wondering, what is this for? I mean, there's always a switch. Why even have it in the menu system? And this is the reason why. And just to let you know, the VR in this lens is the best VR I have ever used. Now, I have a video already talking about my Tamron, because with Tamron, all the lenses comes with image stabilization, like their prime lenses and this lens, and it does an amazing job. I mean, stabilization, it's not going to be magic. The main point of having stabilization is so that it gets rid of the micro jitters. So when you hold a camera and it doesn't have any stabilization, then you could see it kind of shaking. You could see your video shaking with your fingers, with your heartbeat. It's very small but very annoying to see. So you can't handhold a lot of the cameras when you're shooting video because of that. But stabilization gets rid of that, and you can now handhold and run and gun, because a lot of my gigs that I do, like weddings and parties, I gotta be able to be mobile instead of bringing my tripod around with me or carrying a gimbal all day. So stabilization is important, and this lens has VR built into it. And I'm gonna show you a little example of just how good that VR is. And what makes it so good to me is the fact that it feels very organic. It's not very electronic like a lot of the other lenses that I'm used to, right? It has a robotic feel to it. It will just kind of do this robot kind of movement and then lock into place. Or even if it does its best to try to be smooth, there's something about it that just feels very, mechanical, right? But with this lens, with the S lens, it has a more organic feel to it. It feels like as if your body's the one that moved it, and then you just come to a stop, you know, instead of a robot stopping like that, right? It has that great feel to it. And combine it with the electronic VR from the Z6. So let me talk a little bit about the electronic VR in the Z6. It does a good job trying to make your shots super steady. It's almost like a tripod mode, right? It stays still and it tries its best not to move. So that means that if you're shooting, if you're filming or photographing or filming people, then you know, when they move up and down, it will also try to move a little bit with them, thinking that maybe that's the background, so it has a weird feel to it. But if you're just filming like just a tree in a park, then you know, it does a great job just keeping still, but it has a mechanical feel to it. But combining with the organic feel of this VR with the electronic VR, it will organically get in place, and then the electronic VR will kick in and boom, it just locks in. So it has a nice wavy flow and it locks. Whereas, you know, what I'm used to with every other lens and cameras out there with the stabilization, it is very robotic, and then boom, it stays. I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit, but if you've used it so much that you could really feel the little difference. Many of the people, when you see it side by side, and if you just see it for a couple seconds, you can't tell the difference. But if you have used it so much that it's like your third hand, then you could feel every little movement. You could feel every stabilization, the quickness of the focus. Right? Even though the quickness of the focus is just a fraction of a second with almost every lens, that makes a big difference, right? So. Bottom line, the VR is the best, and I love it, and I'm so excited. When I got the lens, I told myself, I said, hey man, it doesn't have VR, but it's the best lens for my photos, so hey, I'm super happy. But once I found out he has VR, I freaking love this lens. I love it. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So autofocus. The focus in this lens is probably the fastest I've ever experienced in any lens, right? Like I said, if every lens, it takes about a second, if not less, to focus onto something, right? And every lens that I've used, it has a gear feel to it. You could feel it, you could hear it, and it goes into focus, and it locks on, and that's how you shoot, and that's what I'm used to in both photo and video. It's that's how it is, right? It's great. And then once I used this lens, once I popped this on and did the focus, oh my god, it blew my mind, because not only is it super quick and probably the most accurate out of all the other lenses that I've used, it has no gear sound, it has no gear feel, right? So with the other lenses, I could just sense this gears just turning to get to that focus point. But with this, it's like as if it's in water and it moves in a watery motion. It is so smooth, and it focuses, and you don't hear nothing, which is great, because I was saying before that when you shoot video with your Nikon Z6 camera for video, if you're not using the S lenses, the Z lenses, then you're gonna hear all the gears and grinding if you are using a microphone that's built in, or that's a boom mic that's on your camera. So that was kind of bad in that sense. But with this Nikon S lens 24-70 f2.8, the focus is so silent, it is so quiet, I don't even understand. Shooting for so long with so many different lenses, it's never been that way, right? So it feels great in your hand, and the focus is amazing, absolutely amazing. So I love it. I'm so excited about it. I think it's just because I just got it, for Christmas, right? But it is that much better. It is worth spending $2,500 after tax to get this. Sometimes it's on sale, so keep an eye out for that. I'll put a link below to get you the sale prices if I find it too. So yes, I probably wouldn't buy it for myself, just because I grew up very cheap. I like to be very thrifty with my money, even whether we have money or not. It's just my mentality, right? But if you do actually get it And if you get one as a gift like I did, then it's, oh my god, it's amazing. It's the best lens ever. So I feel very lucky that my wife was gracious enough to buy me this lens, because now I'm going to be using this most of the time from shooting photos and videos. So I wanted to just talk a little bit other things that really drew me into this. So there's, you know, specs and how many glasses there are. There's a bunch of other videos like that, but I want to just talk about the things that was important to me and that got me to really love this lens. So another thing that I really love is the fact that it's the lightest. It's for the f2.8. Tamron has always been the lightest for the f2.8, and without this 𝐓𝐇𝐍 adapter, it is still heavier than this lens. It's like 0.2 pounds or something like that heavier than this lens. And of course without it, you know, it's smaller, but because with the G2 lens you have to use an 𝐓𝐇𝐍 mount, you have to compare it with the mount on it. So when you put it side by side, it's about, and maybe about an inch, a little less than an inch bigger than the Nikon lens. It's also like I mentioned, 0.2 pounds lighter. So at first, you know, when I thought about it, before I got the lens, I thought, man, it's smaller, it's lighter. I mean, is it that much better? Doesn't it take more things to make it better and bigger to make the lens better in itself? Isn't that how it's supposed to work? But that's not the case with this lens. It is lighter, but it feels expensive. You know what I mean? Even though it's lighter, it's not like a cheap plastic lighter like how a lot of the other lenses that, you know, I'm used to. When it's cheap plastic in your hand, it's light, and that's the trade. But it feels, not only is it light, but it feels expensive in your hand. The plastic, the material, it's a good build. So I wanted to talk about also how it has 3 rings. 3 rings. The front is the focal ring, the middle is the zoom ring, and then the bottom is the aperture ring. The aperture ring is kind of cool because I'm so used to that with the older lenses, right? It has an aperture ring because it's not mechanical aperture control. So then you have to do it this way. But this gives you an option to not only be able to control the aperture with your camera, all of a sudden during the shoot, if you want to change your aperture from 2.8 to 4 or whatever, and you want to do it quick, you could just boom, turn that and look at the little monitor on top, or of course your camera inside. It'll change as you're dialing, and you get the aperture that you want. So for photos, it's great because I do a lot of family shoots, and if I'm shooting one person, I got the f2.8. But if I have like multiple people lined up, you know, behind each other so that everyone is in focus, I like to change my aperture to 4, since 2.8 will kind of blur out whoever's behind that focused person. So it's great to have it like just right away. And I think it's more fun. I mean, of course you could just push the dial, but it's kind of fun to just have it right on your hand, in your fingertip. So that's kind of cool. Also, another thing that I saw in a previous other video that was wrong is that they said that the gears aren't smooth. So that when you're shooting video, for example, it's important to have a zoom look going smooth in and out. Well, this lens is smooth. It's every single ring is smooth, and it's strong. It stays in place. I have lenses that you do this and you kind of move it around, it falls down. So there's a lock that you need to have. I think even my Tamron might even be like that too, maybe. No, my Tamron's good, but the Tamron does have a lock button, but this doesn't. But it's very sturdy and it stays in place, and even the aperture control. So what I personally would use the aperture control is for when I'm shooting a video and I do a lot of movements from inside the house to the outside of the house. And of course you have to change your setting. So I would normally have it on P mode so that it automatically changes it for me just naturally, right? But you have to trust that mechanical system. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's weird. But with this lens, and because of this ring, when I move over, I could go from the 2.8 inside the house, you know, all the way to like 10 if I need to. So that way it's properly exposed from the inside and out. So it has that video option, which is very cool. The monitor itself, I probably won't really be using it too much just because, you know, everything is inside the camera. But it's great to have, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna come to a point where I do use it, especially for video, because with video you're holding the camera like down here looking at your monitor, and if you don't want to keep doing this, or you know, if you want to see the aperture control, you could just look at your lens and just control it, and whatever it changes your aperture. It has an aperture meter, it has a focus meter, it has the zoom, what zoom position that you're in. So it's nifty. I'm pretty sure it's new, and just like the MacBook little touch bar, I guess we just have to get used to it. But it's great that Nikon is thinking progressively and giving us cool things like that to think about. Now, another thing that I love about this Nikon lens is that it comes with a function button right here on the side. Once you attach it to your camera, in the menu where you could change your settings, your function settings, this lens will pop up in the menu. You see a little lens with a little function button highlighted in the menu. So then what I personally changed it to was the focus. This one is to do my focus, because a lot of the times that I shoot with this new Nikon Z6 lens, I love to shoot in full automatic. It does a pretty good job finding faces, and I've talked about it before, where then if it finds multiple faces, you could click right or left and it moves from face to face on who you want it to be in focus. But sometimes, like when you're shooting in this kind of environment where there's trees and some of the, you know, bark looks like it's a shape of a face, the Nikon sometimes thinks that that's a face when there's, I guess, two eyes and a nose and some kind of lips, right? It does that. It's focused on a simple happy face with two dots and a smile that my son was wearing, and it kept focusing there instead of his face. So it's not perfect. It's great. It's probably one of the best, but it's not perfect, right? So how I have it is that I have this as a focus ring, and when it does something weird to me, which is very rare, but when it does happen, you push that button with your thumb, a reticle pops up, you push the shutter button, and then it locks on to whoever you want focus. So it'll track it, and then if they move around, it moves with them. If you move around, it stays right there. So it's amazing to have that, and you could change it to whatever you want to. Change it to something that you change more often, you know. So that's really cool that it has that, you know, making it once again worth spending $2,500 for it. So yeah, I love this lens. So alright guys, so that kind of covers it for me. That's just the very first thought review of this lens, and because I'm in love with this lens, and of course in love with my Z camera, I'm gonna do a lot more reviews of the camera, the lens, and for both video and photo. So if you actually want to get more information personally from me, then please go to 𝐶ameratofreedom.com. Just hook me up with your email. I promise I won't spam you or anything like that. I'm just gonna send you every once in a while some cool tips and tricks about shooting photos and videos and gears and, you know, all that good stuff. And alright, if you've listened to me this long, then I really appreciate you. Please hit the subscribe button below, and I will see you again next time.